Welcome to the REI Student-Led Faculty-Guided Projects Info Webinar. My name is Jennifer Bruin and I am the Project Coordinator for the MSU EDA University Center for Regional Economic Innovation. REI is a program supported by the U.S. Department of Commerce, Economic Development Administration, and the Michigan State Housing and Development Authority. It was established in the fall of 2011 to support the identification, creation, and development of innovative economic development strategies that may yield high-growth entrepreneurship and job creation in distressed regions of Michigan. Each year, the REI University Center supports several innovative economic development projects. The purpose of today's webinar is to discuss REI and its support of student-led, faculty-guided projects. A couple of times each year, the REI University Center identifies 6 to 12 university, community, and economic development projects. These projects are led by university and community college students and are guided by faculty, and are supported through small REI stipends to offset any costs associated with completion of the initiatives. As of today, REI has supported 27 of these projects. This year, REI selected to support 17 technical assistance projects. This year's partners included Madonna University, MSU Business School, Meridian Township, University of Michigan Flint Shop Floor Theater, City of Perry, MSU CARS program, Lake Superior State University, Wayne State University, MSU School of Planning, Design, and Construction, U of M Ann Arbor, Saginaw Valley State, City of Frankfort, St. Clair County, City of Port Huron, City of Owasso, City of Flint, Detroit, and Idlewild Resort Community. For years, universities and colleges have offered classes called Practicum, Studio, Field-Based Studies, Service Learning, or Capstone through schools, programs, and departments, studying social work, environmental studies, business development, health and medicine, IT and technology science, public policy, urban planning, or community and economic development. Typically, they are classes offered for credit, and they often fulfill credit requirements in order to earn a degree. The content of these courses vary by discipline, but essentially they are similar in design and format, and many of them follow this student-led, faculty-guided model in order to complete a one-term project in a community or region, urban, suburban, or rural. That allows the students to work with a real-world situation for one semester. The projects conducted over the course of the semester vary greatly, but usually they are collaborative in nature and provide the students with new knowledge, skills, and a hands-on experience. And so these learning experiences help to bridge the transition from classroom to professional practice. This purposeful linkage of student learning to real-world application is expected to increase at Michigan University and community colleges, and the outcome will be better skilled graduates and an improvement in the state's capacity to retain talent. For the communities and its professionals, these classes provide access to technical assistance and data analysis that may not have otherwise been available, especially these days where communities are suffering from a severe lack of resources. Today, we will hear from 3 professors working at Michigan universities about their experience in teaching these student-led, faculty-guided projects, the types of projects they've been involved in, and the community partnerships that they have gained. They will specifically address their recent projects that were supported by the REI University Center. I'd like to begin with Rex LaMore from MSU. Rex LaMore is a director of Michigan State University's Center for Community and Economic Development. He is a member of the Urban and Regional Planning Program faculty. He has over 35 years of experience in community and economic development, and has focused his career on the unique challenges of revitalizing distressed communities and policies and practices related to promoting equitable and sustainable development. Following Rex will be Dr. Norm Tyler. He is an FAICP and a professor and advisor for the EMU Graduate Planning Program. He is a planner and architect specializing in downtown revitalization and historic preservation. He's the author of books in both fields. In 2012, he was inducted as a fellow in the American Institute of Certified Planners. His special interests include historic preservation, downtown planning, and online applications for planning education. Our last presenter will be Dr. Ralf Wilhelms, who is a highly experienced senior business analyst and entrepreneur. His 15 years of hands-on experience in startups demonstrates strong technical and business qualifications in the areas of strategic planning, business unit development, project and product management, and system engineering strategies. In 2005, Wilhelms began the transitional process to academia. Dr. Wilhelms is currently an associate professor with Lake Superior State University in the International Business Department. He has published numerous articles in national and international journals, and his research interests are in the areas of international business, strategic management, economic development, and marketing with an entrepreneurial spirit at heart. With that, I'd like to begin with the slide presentation.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. Let me begin by just giving some brief orientation to our REI project. Ms. Bruin gave a good introduction to it, but partly what we're trying to do is to create a new economic development model for the state of Michigan. We're finding that some of the traditional economic development tools and practices are no longer effective or not as effective as we had hoped. So with the support of a broad network of the economic development partners throughout the state of Michigan, we're about the business of identifying new and innovative tools, models, policies, and practices in economic development. And we're doing that through a purposeful process of engaging colleagues and partners across the state involved in this work. We have a model here that describes somewhat of the work, including the types of networks. These are virtual networks bringing in partners from around the state engaged in workforce development, business development, higher education, particular interests on distressed areas, who help us identify opportunities for innovation and economic development, provide expertise in developing that knowledge, and work with us on disseminating that information and ultimately applying these skills to help improve the quality of life in their communities. And basically our REI annual model includes a number of activities, including co-learning plans where we're generating new ideas, innovative practices, and technical assistance and feasibility studies where we're actually doing this work. And today we're going to talk about the technical assistance and feasibility studies that we are supporting through what we call student-led, faculty-guided projects. And in my experience with this, because as a member of the Urban and Regional Planning faculty at Michigan State University, we, as a part of our capstone course, as a part of our accreditation for planning students, teach a course called Practicum, where we partner with community partners for a semester on a particular project that is achievable in that semester, resulting in a specific planning document, professional planning document that both is of need to provide the community and demonstrates to the profession that our students are capable of doing what planners are expected to do in their professional practice. And so over the years we've generated a number of feasibility studies ranging from parcel-specific activities, what can we do with this abandoned building, to commercial corridor studies, to downtown development studies, and market studies that help identify potential market strategies for a community to create jobs and provide needed goods and services in those communities. We do that with community partners who work with our student teams. These are teams of students who negotiate a scope of work with their partner, conduct that scope of work, present their findings to their partners at the end of the semester, and share it with their colleagues across the campus and others in the profession. And again, helping the community gain access to expertise they may not have otherwise available to them. And as Ms. Bruin mentioned in the introduction, one of the projects that we supported this last year through our practicum and through this project was our partnership with Idlewild, Michigan, a rural area on the west side of the state. Idlewild has been a rather unique historic community in that it was a black resort community in the Jim Crow period of the United States, and up to the 60s there were a number of famous African American residents in that community. It has since had some economic hard times. They are interested in revitalizing that rural area, trying to provide opportunities for new residents to move in. And so our team of students looked at the cultural assets in that community, what economic development opportunities might be available, looking at the region, and provided for them a very extensive set of recommendations, and these materials are available on our REI website that you might look at to see the kinds of activities that these students are able to produce in a 15-week student-led, faculty-guided, community-supported project. And that's an example of the kind of technical assistance that a group of planning seniors are able to produce in partnership with the community. And again, we're interested in partnering with other members of higher education across the state in doing that. And we have some really fine colleagues that have collaborated with us this past years, and we're going to hear from them today to also help potential applicants see what the possibilities might be for them in their coursework and the kind of opportunities this might present for their students and the kind of benefits that might accrue to community partners that are engaged with them in this kind of work. And so with that, I'd like to turn this over to my colleague Norm Tyler at Eastern Michigan University to share some of his work.
Thank you, Rex. For a good number of years, I've been very interested in how to convert applications, procedures used by local governments into an online format. And when I first started, I could get students involved with it, but local officials were very hesitant to go online and try to do things. Over the years, we have newer city officials who are much more familiar with the web, and these kind of applications have become much more acceptable than they have been in the past. One of the questions we always have is, are these tools, these online tools, better for an actual situation or an educational situation? And I've been straddling between both. And I think the best examples are when students are able to get involved in in communities with professionals to do projects. In the past year, our students got involved with both undergraduate students and graduate students working with the city of Ypsilanti on a project to renew a site, an unused site in the city. And the group worked with preservation students, public administration students, construction management students, and also the city planner and other local officials making a presentation at the end of the semester. Some of the tools that were created by the planning students as part of the REI program are especially interesting. I'm going to show you just a couple of those tools that students did. The first is a tool that allows a community to consider street improvements and what's involved in doing street improvements. Let's say that we go to that particular application at a site that I've created called WebPolis. The first slide shows how the streetscape looks when it is old and what can happen with it with changes to it. So it gives an illustration of what could happen with street improvements. But how does that come about? First of all, if you type in the name of your city and state, as it shows on the bottom of the slide, and we'll try Ypsilanti, Michigan, for instance, our home city, it'll bring up a map of the city using Google Maps. From that, you can scroll over the portion of the map that you want to consider for your design guidelines, and it enlarges that section, puts it in black and white. I'll explain why in a minute. And this is the section that you might want to do street improvement program for. It then allows you to consider some of the types of street improvements that could be used. For instance, you might want to consider banners, putting banners on the street. It then gives you some idea of the types of banners and the cost of each, not too much difference in the price there for these different banners. Or you might want to consider street trees. Once again, it gives you some information on the size of the trees and the relative cost, so you can make some decisions on that. Or maybe even just trash receptacles, and it gives you the idea of that there are different kinds of trash receptacles. So you now, as a local official or a community resident, whoever wants to do this, has some information to work with. The next thing the application does then, it shows you, it gives you an idea to pull these icons down and place them on your map where you'd like to see them. We have placed the banners. We've now placed the trees on and the trash cans. And once you've tried that, you say to yourself, okay, I think that's what we want for our streetscape improvement program. How much does it cost? And so as you can see then, finally, if I move this over here a little bit, it will give you the items that you've selected, and it will give you your total project cost. So it allows local officials or residents or whoever is in the community to do some initial analysis of what a streetscape improvement program is all about. Then you can go to the professionals or you can go to others and become much more educated about it and move forward that way. So that's an example of one of our programs that was created with a joint student-faculty team. The other one is design guidelines. A lot of communities are considering the fact that they get ugly buildings. Can there be a way to protect against, have better designed buildings in their communities? And so we've set up an online a way for you to write design guidelines based on good examples. And so it gives you an introduction to this, and it splits it up into 3 different categories. One is your site planning, what's around the building, and it gives you then different kinds of guidelines that you can use, and you can select the ones that you would like to have for your design guidelines. For instance, you read them over and you say, let's do these. It allows you then to have guidelines for the building itself, and you can see some of the guidelines there as they've been listed. I won't go into them at all, but I think you can see the idea. And then it also gives for building elements. From that then, you have design guidelines that are automatically created online. You can download a PDF, or you can download a Word document version of it, and it shows, as we have the output here, the design guidelines that you've selected. You also are allowed to revise and modify and add as you go along. It also then concludes in the design guidelines with a design review process. How should you implement this thing? And a design review board, the members that would be part of this. So those are 2 projects that the students created through the REI program. Another one was for incubator facilities. I won't go into that right now because I want to show you one more thing, and that is an online series of applications that we're creating now called the Rivertown Simulation, and this is an educational package, and it's meant to give students an example of how they can take on a role in revitalizing a downtown. Now, we worked in Ypsilanti, and over the course of a 15-week semester, we only had 1 or 2 meetings. The purpose of the simulation is over those same 15 weeks. Each week represents a year in the life of this fictional city, and so we can go through 15 years of revitalization rather than just 15 weeks. And as we look at this, then you can see that there are 2 columns here. Let me pull up the other side if I can. On the left is what I call street talk, and this is just general online conversation about the people that live in this fictional town of Rivertown, basically the students taking on roles, and they're just talking about anything that they want. We really haven't started a run yet. We will in September, but it's just kind of a continuing conversation. But sometimes out of those conversations you want to get into specific topics, and so over on the right side of the screen then you can see that you can create a new topic, for instance, dealing with transportation or a historic district or whatever, or the topic I have up here now is Rivertown roles. We're going to have an election. The students will take on different roles, and I have set up what we call a consensus builder so that you can actually not only just discuss it, but try to develop a consensus by voting for different things. For instance, if we want to look at who you'd like to have on City Council, we've put down 5 alternatives here, and you can vote as to how strongly you feel each one of those persons would be on the City Council, and you can express your vote, pushing vote, and it then records it. And over the course of the discussion, you can see not only what your vote was as an individual, but also how all the votes are, trying to develop a consensus. So those are a couple, very quickly, those are a couple of the things that we've been working on, trying to bring online applications for local governments and better education for our students. And I'll leave it at that and move it on to Ralf, who is going to be the next presenter for us.
All right. Thank you, Norm. Thank you, Rex, for sharing. In our case here at Lake Superior State University, we were looking at geographic clusters. I want to give you a little bit of background information and then share some specifics about how this enhanced the student education or the learning in the classroom. The background information was I worked as a business analyst trying to turn around business all over the United States for several years. And one thing talking to businesses is I had to understand their purchasing process. So I learned during that time period that businesses look more at products rather than the name or the industry of a business. And when we talked here in Michigan about connecting businesses and creating economic prosperity through that, so that businesses first will do business with companies in Michigan, I felt during the discussion that there was a component missing. We are here in a fairly rural area, and we have to be more creative and more resourceful with the little things we have. We felt that it would be of interest to companies to maybe display their products. So what we done is we developed a website, went around in the community, met with the companies, and the students actually participated in this process. They went and we developed the concept. They went to the companies and we talked to them about creating a website to display their products. And they thought that it was an economically sound idea and supported that. We actually had 10 companies working with us on this one. So we created the website, and then the paradigm that we know today for economic development was that yes, there's some geographic clusters, but they were all from the same industry. In our region, we don't have that occurrence. We have a geographic region where you have a very diverse industry, and they have to be diverse, because if they aren't, they cannibalize the existing markets, and therefore the chances of success are minimized. So we felt, and with help from MSU EDU, we were able to secure an REI grant to market the website. So this is really a shift in paradigm, because we're looking at diverse industries in a geographical region. We are looking at marketing the product to other businesses over the internet in other countries. Now, researching the literature, there isn't anything done like this today. So developing approaches for that maybe could entail bias, and it maybe leads to just thinking inside the box. So we felt here at LSSU, with the opportunity of the grant, to engage students in the process. We actually went into an international marketing course, presented the framework, and asked students to develop approaches to reach companies in other countries. And the first setup we did is we had about 21 students in the course, and we created working groups of 3s that then had to select or agree upon a country they would market the website to. That way we could track their efforts and see what they could, how much traffic they could generate. The students were, we didn't give the students any directions on how to select the country. They had to do it themselves, and then they had to come up with their own approaches from what they knew or their knowledge base was at the time. What we learned, I mean, there were a variety of approaches, and I don't want to go into detail. There was a variety of approaches, but, and here's a specific example how this process really helps. But each group had to provide a plan, and including outcomes, to receive money to implement that plan. We actually took the REI funds and says, okay, we're going to use that to market that. So we're going to create a budget for each of the groups, and then they have to justify how they spent it. justify what the results were, and see what they can establish with their new approaches. During the budget process, and I give a little glimpse into the classroom here, during the budget process, we had some groups that required more money than others. At the end of the day, there was one group, or actually two groups, that were short money. Now, other students or other groups, because they said, hey, we want to help our colleagues, offered to share $50 or $100 of their budget with them. Now, because they never sat in a process like this, I, at that time, as an instructor, as one of the instructors in the course, the other instructor was Professor Phillips, I questioned their approach, because if they're willing to give up money to another group, I questioned if they feel like that their approach was better than theirs, or the success of the overall project of the group was not given anymore by spending $50 or giving partial of their budgets away. The students never thought about it that way. They never thought about, okay, the end result, will it impact the end result? And all of a sudden, it created a different environment in the classroom. Now, there were uncertainties that students showed within the classroom, because all of a sudden they were spending money but weren't sure about the end results. So it helped them in the decision-making process. And another thing that was interested in was the tools they were using. I mean, there was a number of groups that used Google AdWords or identified Google AdWords as one of their preferred tools to reach other companies or or attract visitors to the website. You see, in the moment they looked at Google AdWords and were able to critically think about the process, how it works, and how to attract people, provided them a skill that is marketable actually after they graduate. So it had at multiple levels this putting reality more into the classroom benefited the students at various junctures in the process. Just to let you know, we actually in this process says that part of the grade was as well tied into how much traffic they would generate from their country to the website. Within a time period of 30 days, we generated about close to 6,000 unique visits to the website, which we, through Google Analytics, tracked to specific countries. I mean, just to give you an example, some of the students, everything from Russia, England, Turkey, Brazil, Argentina, Canada, were some of the choices. And even through this process, at the end, there maybe when we reviewed the project, I mean, students now came up with the analysis. They said, okay, next time we would do the project, we maybe would consider other factors that we never even thought about in the process of selecting a country, so that we can show greater success, because ultimately the objective was to generate traffic for it. What we learned, we as an institution learned from this process, was that if we would have a greater variety of products on the website, that the visitors that we generated would see more benefit out of visiting the website and would maybe spend more time on the website. We were tracking the time component for each of the groups as well. So looking at the experience from an educator, it was time factors and money factors influence how people will make decisions. And we truly never introduced that. This real life decision making and accountability in this way hasn't been seen by the students. So we, and I share with you here is this is the website that was created for the products. On the bottom here, you see how the products are displayed. The companies that we worked with never were displayed on the website. What would happen is we get a unique visit. If they inquired about a product, the email would come to me, and I would then turn that lead over to the company, and then the company could decide if they wanted to engage in the exporting process or not. Because it was international, exporting was obviously a main topic of it. Here's Google Analytics. You see some of the countries, how we used it. We were able to analyze the audience. We were able to analyze how effective the tools were that our students used. And because it was uncharted territory for business to business on an internet approach creating leads, we felt like that students came up with very unique approaches. I mean, everything from Facebook, from Google, from running ads in local papers down within the specific country was quite eye-opening for the students. And they had obviously the hurdles to jump over, the challenges that they're facing with running an ad, making it in a timely manner. All those components played a role from a marketing aspect that they had to learn and to deal with. I hope I covered everything, and I hope I was able to share some of the experience that we had within the classroom. I personally thought it was for the students a valuable learning process. We actually did a survey with the students, what they felt. They actually felt that the skills that they learned during the class sessions, they felt that they were applicable to skills being used in the workforce. They thought, or their perception was, that these skills will enhance their opportunities and will make them more marketable for employers. So they actually made it part of their portfolio as well. If you have any questions, please just shoot them my way.
Thank you, Ralf and Norm and Rex. I think both of these projects, Norm's last year and Ralph's this year, are extremely unique from each other, but also have some similarities. They're kind of the future of planning and business, maybe, when we look at websites and online tools. So I think this was nice to have the two of you as opposed to the standard, maybe, student-led, faculty-guided project. Not to say that those standard or traditional ones that Rex usually leads are not worthy, because they're very important, and they often have to do with bricks and mortar and have to do with planning for master plans and economic development, real, tangible products. So I think that it's interesting, the mix that we have today presenting. Norm, I think I'm gonna put this slide on so everybody can see you. Now, I just want to make one comment. I actually am a student of Norm's, and I was able to be in the class with the river town simulation, and I have to tell you that leaving that class, afterwards I understood a lot more about planning and specifically economic development. So I believe that that tool was probably a significant part of my education at Eastern Michigan University. So I want to say that so that everyone hears it that's listening to this webinar, that it may be a tool that we find useful for a lot of communities, and also, in the classroom. It could be a template for others to use. But I really appreciated that.
I appreciate the comment, Jen, and I've been working on the Rivertown simulation for many, many years, and I think it's going into a better form now than ever. And one of the things, I consider my career project, basically, and one of the things that students have mentioned is when they go out and get a job in downtown revitalization or in in a city planning office or whatever, they feel they've been through a lot of those battles already in the classroom through their role playing. And so
That's
they
right.
feel much more experienced, I think, the first time they face it out on the job, because they've gone through 15 years in Rivertown. So
Yes.
I'm glad you feel the same way.
And yeah, and similar to Ralph's project, this accountability, that happens in Rivertown simulation because you only have so much money that you can play with, you know, and you have to make the right decisions. If you don't, you could lose quite a bit because you're investing in buildings, you're restoring buildings, you're starting businesses in that downtown, and you can lose. So it's
If I can make a plug too, the Rivertown simulation is very closely tied to the book I wrote on planning and community development, a guide for the 21st century, and that book is filled with exercises from Rivertown. So I think the two things complement each other very well.
yeah. Courtney, do you have any questions or comments? Okay. We have a couple participants here. Well, one student. Ralph, I'm always, this is a picture of Ralf Wilhelms. I'm always amazed every time I hear you say the number of unique visitors to the website, and that was attained in 6 weeks or less, that you were able to have 4,200, I think it was, visitors to your...
Was actually the newest count is a little bit more than 5.5.
That is tremendous. It's really, and we're having discussions with a lot of other university partners and community partners, and we're sharing your project, and I think there's a lot of interest in taking your template or model and applying it to maybe different industries, or maybe just, as you're saying, different clusters based on region.
And I just want to share that when you talk to those universities, I'm more than glad to share with what we've done here, how we went about it, because there's certain kind of paperwork involved that we go through with the companies and things like that. But, I mean, we truly here definitely in the UP, have to think about how we position ourselves and how we market ourselves in the global environment. And if we have it in the UP or in Michigan, what makes the difference?
Yeah.
I mean, if we could create consensus among universities and say, hey, let's work on this project and let's get our communities involved, that maybe is a different way how we can contribute to economic development within our state.
Yeah.
If I may too, I think that both of these projects indicate there used to be this principle of agglomeration where if you wanted to be successful in business, you needed to be near other businesses that were similar. With the online environment, this is no longer true. Geographically isolated places all over the world can now be very involved in all aspects of development. And once we refine this online environment, I think that we'll find it's an unlimited kind of potential.
And Norm, I agree with you there, and especially in business, now it's more and even very important to establish a brand. And if we wanted to establish a brand as the state of Michigan or the Upper Peninsula, I think it's very important that we position it right. And the value for the visitors will increase as more products you have showing there. The importance is it's that you are clear about who you're selling to, because this is a website is designed for a business-to-business transaction, not a business-to-consumer transaction. So we will find that, especially in the online environment, we are not looking at the products anymore. It's maybe we need to start viewing more the end consumer and characterize them to then say, okay, here's the product offerings that we can offer, that we can provide to you.
Do both of you have kind of a tutorial of sorts that maybe you could, I know your reports probably explain most of the how you designed it, but I'm wondering if there's more of a tutorial that could be designed on how to set these up, step-by-step process or something.
My project, I don't think, can really be put into a tutorial. What I would suggest is that anyone who is interested go to the website and try it out, join it. It's very easy to do, and I should give you the website name, which is rivertown.webpolis, which is WEBPOLIS, rivertown.webpolis.us. And you'll be able to jump into the simulation and see many of the things. We've got hundreds of web pages connected with it. And so you could explore it for days. And I would love to have people do that and send me an email.
And in my case, no, I don't have a tutorial for it. And maybe in the white paper, Jennifer, that I provided you with, you will see some of the steps from the marketing aspect of it, which is only one aspect of it, one section of it. There's maybe the managing of the and collecting of the data points that there's some paperwork involved, but no, I don't, to be honest. So, but what I have is anybody who's interested in viewing the website, they can go to lssu.edu, Eastern UP, that is EUP exports /home.php to visit it. But the marketing aspect, you see, now you can carve out things that are specific to maybe departments within business. And I actually work together with the marketing department in international business. But there are various aspects of this project that could be applied to other departments as well. And to be honest, Jennifer, I was very thankful for your guys' support, and I mean the federal government with coming up with the money, and I think you can, with these kind of projects, you can create a different and new learning environment.
That's what I was going to ask you, is that REI funding looks like it was used in great ways and highly beneficial to your team.
Yes.
I'm going to move on to talk about the fall application and the process. For those that are listening to the webinar, the due date is August 14th, so you'll be listening to this webinar hopefully just before or within a week or two before it'll be due.
I want to thank you. I want to thank Rex for making these opportunities available to us and our students, and it's a new experience. I mean, we always think about how we want to bring the classroom closer to the real world. Here, we actually bring the real world into the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Bye, Ralph. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.